What's going on, hockey fans? Another week, another Dan K show, another chance to talk about our favorite thing in all the land, the sport of hockey and the great United States Premier Hockey League. Elite and premier competition is on the docket today, and competition is a key word to start this off with because me and my co host, my consigliere, mon frere from another mayor, Lucas Jones, that's an introduction, that's official. You'll be able to talk when I'm done with this sentence, are going to compete today in a fun little game rather than just recapping a week, recapping games, recapping what's going on. We have some teams that are en fuego right now, and it is time to talk about some of the hottest starts to the season and some teams that started slow who are heating up of late. We're going to try to challenge each other a bit. Lucas, are you ready for a fun show today on the Dan K Show?
I mean, listen, why would we have fun when we could have fun and have there be a winner and a loser? That is generally how these interactions go. You leave Dan K and I alone for long enough, aka 6 hours, we'll find a way to have a winner and a loser at potentially the most boring of activities. But this no boring activity, we get a chance to talk about some of the best teams in the league right now.
That's 100% right, Lucas. And we also want to, before we start, thank the Nashville Spartans for having us out. The incredible ownership group there. If you are looking for a place to play, look no further than the Nashville Spartans. An incredible small town feel right down the road from the city of honky tonks and music. And oh my gosh, Lucas, where did we get that turkey from? That barbecue? What was that place called?
So we went to, on the recommendation of the Nashville Spartans, we went to Jack's Barbecue right on Broadway. I've been to Nashville a couple of times. Huge fan of Jack's. Huge fan of Jason Aldean's and some of the establishments up and down that street. Dan K, his first time in Nashville on Broadway. We heard the music. We hit the rooftops. We went to Jack's Barbecue. That smoked turkey, not often can you find a place that can pull off a smoked turkey like Jack's.
Look, I don't know if Lucas will be able to find it, but if you see the video of the possum that got onto the football field that they had to take off of the field recently, that was Lucas pulling Dan K away from Broadway saying, buddy, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here. Just the possum, just trying to grab on and stay with his friends in the beautiful Music City. What a time. What a place to be. No better place than Nashville. They lost when we were there, but night number two, Lucas, they come back with a shutout victory over the Metro Jets. The first time the Metro Jets were shut out since 2020. That is how big of a win that was for the Spartans on home ice.
Yeah, and we want to thank Matt Prier for helping us out with that statistic. He is one part broadcaster, one part Metro Jets historian. He is the guy for your Metro Jets questions. And one other thing we did while we were in Nashville was a live podcast at Mill Creek Brewing Company, the unofficial official hangout of the Nashville Spartans coaching staff and parents. You can listen to that live podcast. The link is in the description right underneath this video, so you can go listen to what it's like if you bring the Dan K Show out and let us do a live podcast near you.
All right, with that in mind, it's time to have a little bit of a competition, okay, Lucas? We have right now, let me count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 teams between the Elite and Premier on a 5-game point streak or better. What does that mean, Dan? That means if for 5 games in a row you at the very least lost in an overtime or shootout and got 1 point out of a game, you were on a 5-game or more streak. This all got sparked by a 2-game dominating sweep by the Potomac Patriots on road ice against the Charlotte Rush to go to 18-0-2-0 on the season. They have played 20 games, Lucas, and they have yet to not come out of a game with at least a point. A 20-game point streak, nearly unheard of in the game of hockey.
It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And we're going to get a chance to talk about it. We've got a few other teams that have been on some impressive streaks, and now we're going to put our league knowledge and our guessing abilities to the test.
And Lucas, the stakes, we talked about it off the air. We will unveil it on the air. When you get to Utica Nationals, there is no better coffee than Utica Coffee. They're not officially sponsoring the Dan K Show yet, but I will be bothering them and knocking on their front doors for the next 6 months, getting ready for Nationals the way I always do, drinking way too much coffee and begging for a coffee partnership. Utica Coffee makes something that is absolutely delicious. It's called a red eye. It's a pistachio red eye. It's a little pistachio flavor, a red eye. It means like a little extra espresso, like not as much cream, right, Lucas? Is that what it's like, a black coffee with espresso?
So exactly, it's a black coffee with a shot of espresso in it, the little pistachio flavoring. I like it with almond milk. I think it's great that way. But they do add up over the course of a 9-day nationals competition. So what we'll be doing is the winner of this competition over the
Yep.
course of the season, because it could take a while to resolve itself, will have all of their pistachio red eyes paid for in full by the loser of the competition. And Dan, and for the folks at home, we can really tell you that that might be sizable after looking at our credit card statements after last year's nationals.
That is 100% correct. It's going to be exciting to see. Remember, no other coffees, Lucas. Iced
No.
coffee doesn't count. Regular coffee doesn't count. Even a pistachio coffee doesn't count. It's got to be a red eye. That's what's covered by this bet. Let's go, though. We start with the Hershey Cubs in the Premier, Lucas. Let's start with the Hershey Cubs. They're coming into this one 11-4-1-0. They've won 6 consecutive contests, including a weekend sweep over the Jersey Hitmen. They now head out to Detroit to test themselves out at that Detroit Showcase in Mount Clemens, Michigan, that will be at Sunday and Monday after a trip to Charlotte. Lucas, I'll let you start first. When does Hershey lose next?
Well, I think for Hershey, they are about to hit a bit of a test. Whenever you go outside your division, especially to a showcase format, the division that hosts you tends to put you up against it a little bit, right? They want to challenge you, they want to test you, they're going to welcome you into the building, but they want to make sure that you get a good matchup, right? So I think for Hershey, I think their first loss is going to come at the Detroit Showcase. I think their opponents are just too good, kind of up and down the board. I think they'll be very successful this weekend. I think this Hershey program has been good so far. But I'm eyeing, Dan, a Friday afternoon matchup against the Battle Creek Colonels. I think that might be the first game that they end up dropping on this streak. But I think for the Hershey Cubs, what an impressive run for them, beating teams all up and down their area. I think this is turning into a pretty good season for them.
Yeah, coming into this one, they've beaten the Rockets a big win, the Hitmen twice, Buffalo twice, and the Brooklyn Aviators. I think they get got at 8 a.m. I think it's going to be a closer game than most may think, and I think they might be able to squeak the point out of it. That's all they need. They just got to get to OT. But I think the Blue Ox get them in the Battle of the Boudreaux. It's Jay Witta against Bruce Boudreaux and the Boudreaux family and Crystal Boudreaux. The Boudreaux have worked with the Blue Ox. They've owned the Blue Ox. Jay Witta, these guys love each other, but it's going to be a fun matchup. 8 a.m., first thing in the morning. It'll be a tough one to wake up for these two sides, so you never know. Anything can happen in these 8 a.m. starts, but I think that's where they get got. I will tell you this, though. Lucas, folks at home, I think if Hershey can get by the Blue Ox with at least a point, I don't think they drop a point again until December 15th against the Pal Junior Islanders. I think they go a while. I think this is a long streak for Hershey. If they can get through it, we will see. Let's go to number 2 on the list, the Bold City Battalion, the great Rhett Vossler. Beautiful man, wonderful mustache, great head of hair, and a man with tattoos all over his body and wins all over the ice right now. They're 12-3-2-0. 26 points. Dan K recently picked them to go to the Premier Nationals. 7-0-1-0 in their last 8. I will tell you, since Dan K's prediction, that streak started. They've gotten a point in 8 straight games since Dan K said they were going to the Premier Nationals. That's called the Dan K bump. Lucas, when does Bold City lose next?
Well, I'll tell you what, Bold, you want to talk about going up against it, right? After a 4-2 overtime win against the Tampa Bay Juniors, Bold City travels to the Fort Myers Stadium, a place where many teams in the Florida and Southeast Division have suffered losses at the hands of the Florida Eels. I think Bold City wins game 1.
Ooh.
I think Bold City wins game 2. I think Bold City loses game 3. I think they're losing that Monday game against the Eels. Look, I know the Eels are a little banged up in terms of injury right now. They just had a couple of tough weekend series, but they're the Eels. They are an incredible team. They've got a lot of depth. Hearing some rumors that there's some internal shuffling as well to compensate for those injuries. Some elite guys that are moving up to fill some spots at Premier. And those elite guys have already proven that they can be successful at that level. So I think the Monday game is where Bold City drops.
I think Bold City wins game 1. I think game 2 is where they lose. I think they win game 3 again. I think it's a 4-point weekend for Bold City, but I do think it's tough to get through a 3-game weekend
Yep.
in Fort Myers. It's a long road trip from Jacksonville. People think Hey Dan, you live in the Tampa area, the greater Tampa area. I'm down visiting Jacksonville. Why don't you come see me? 3.5 hours away. I might as well be in New Jersey where I lived originally and drive up to see you in Boston, Massachusetts. Or hey Dan, I'm down in Miami. Nope, 6 hours away, folks. I might as well drive up to Maine from New Jersey to come visit you. So this to my family that watches and listens in. Florida is really big, guys. If you're not in the greater Tampa area, I ain't coming to see you. You come to see me, or you tell me to meet you somewhere with plenty of lead time. I think everyone's families this time of
Yeah.
year, Thanksgiving time. I think everyone's family needs a little reminder that we all need to work together to see one another if we want to do that. Let's go to number 3 on the list, the Motor City Gamblers, Lucas. Gamblers 9-1, 1-1 on the season. 7-0, 1-0 in their last 8. They're on an 8-game point streak. When do they lose next? It's my turn to pick first. I can't just keep putting you on the dot here. I'm going to go and look at this schedule. They're going in. They play South Shore this weekend. So Motor City, instead of going to Mount Clemens across the state, they're testing themselves and heading out to the Northeast. I think Motor City is going to have a real tough matchup on their hands in prime time against South Shore. If South Shore doesn't get them, Connecticut, the Junior Rangers, I think are a top 10 team, but I think South Shore gets them Friday night.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that if they do get past South Shore, Dan, it's going to be the Connecticut Junior Rangers. That is a clash of styles, I think, if I've ever seen one. I love the season that Motor City is putting together. They are putting together a big season for themselves. Overwhelming offensive power is the word that we are seeing. And it's not just flashy, right? It's not just all this fancy stick handling. It is physical play. It is overwhelming play. It is downhill skating at its finest. Love what the Gamblers are doing. But again, you talk about teams coming out of their division to play showcases. They don't get easy roads. They suspiciously sometimes get a little bit of a harder road than some other teams.
And Lucas, we talk about this. It's almost like Dan K saw this coming because we have another schedule coming up. How about the Minnesota Squatch? They're 13-2-1-0, 27 points. They're on a 6-game point streak, 5-0, 1-0 in their last 6. They immediately play the Metro Jets on November 17th. I think the streaks are all coming to an end. I think the Squatch are going to get beat by the Jets on the Jets' home ice there to kick things off. Then I think they roll off back-to-back victories, and I think they go to OT against Toledo in a coin toss matchup at 12:30 p.m. on their final day of the showcase. I think they have a 5-point showcase, which is great, but I think it's tough to beat the host team on day one. Metro Jets beat the Squatch day one. I think that's where the Squatch lose next.
It's interesting that you say that, Dan, because I think the Squatch are going to beat the host on day one. I think they're going to roll up. They're going to say, thanks for the food. Dinner was delicious. Really enjoyed the appetizers. Thanks for the 2 points. They're going to beat the Metro Jets. They're going to beat the Fort Wayne Spacemen. They're going to beat the Columbus Mavericks. And they potentially, Dan, beat the Toledo Cherokee. I actually don't think they lose until December.
Okay.
December 1st against the Hudson Havoc. They're going to be welcoming the Havoc into the Furniture and Things Community Event Center, but I think they go 4-0 in Detroit. They don't lose in the month of November.
Our favorite community event center, the furniture and things and stuff and the like and all types of who's what's and gizmos and gadgets. Community event center in beautiful Minnesota, the state of hockey. That's sometimes a little chilly starting December 1st when the Hudson Havoc are being said to have beaten the Squatch, according to Lucas. Okay, so that is the name of that building. We've gotten through that. Let's go to number 5. Lucas, you're back on the docket. The Northern Cyclones. Cyclones are 9-5-0-0. This is an interesting one. Started the year 4-5 to kick off the season. They've won 5 straight to get it to 9-5. The defending champions, Lucas. When do they lose next?
Well, I think this is one that's a little bit tougher for us to call here because you look back a little bit, right? And yeah, it's November, but October wasn't that far away. A split series against the Connecticut Junior Rangers, split series against the Utica Junior Comets. I think the problem for me here, Dan, is that when Northern wins, they win by a bunch. When they lose close games against tough teams. They have a tendency to split series. I think their next loss is going to be again against the Utica Junior Comets. Okay. I think it's going to be that Thursday, December 7th game at the Adirondack Bank Center. That is when they're going to lose. They've got 2 tough opponents, though. They've got South Shore and Springfield coming up.
Lucas, I look ahead and I love what this Northern team is doing. They're taking the trip down to Florida in December. They're going to take on the Eels, the Juniors, the Rush, and the Generals.
Good luck, boys.
If they go 4-0 there, I'm just gonna let them. I'm gonna text Bill Dubs and
Yeah.
tell him just keep the trophy, brother. I mean that is a gauntlet, and it's not to say they can't beat all those
No.
teams on one given day, but try everybody who's played the game of hockey at a showcase at any level of the game, any league, anywhere. When you play those 4 games in 3 days, you know it's really difficult to go 4-0 against anybody. That schedule alone is going to be crazy. It reminds me, it's a little reminiscent of what Nashville went through. I liked your pick of Utica, Lucas. In the spirit of competition, I'm not going to say the same thing. That was going to be my pick. I was going to say day two against Utica, they lose next. I'm going to go and say that they go 2-0 to kick off the Florida Showcase, and they lose their next one against the Charlotte Rush, 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, December 16th at Hertz Arena Blue Rink. But I think they come out of that showcase with 5 points. I think it's an OTL to Florida. I think it's maybe a regulation win against Tampa in a close one. I think they lose to Charlotte and they beat Richmond. I think they come out with 5 out of 8 points from that showcase, and they go into the winter break feeling real good about themselves, Lucas. Real good.
Interesting. And they really do. They have got such a tough schedule coming up, and then they get right back at it, right? When they come up north, they go back up against South Shore, right? They go up against them twice in January. Then they've got some games against Gatineau. And I mean, they're just going to go through it this year. Their record will be well earned at the end of the season.
Lucas, now we get to an interesting one. Fresno Monsters are 12-0 to kick off the season with 24 points. They've won 12 straight. The Ontario Junior Reign are 14-0 with 28 points. They're eventually going to run into each other. They're in the same division. A 12-game winning streak, a 10-game winning streak. Fresno has not lost yet. They swept Vegas. They swept Seattle. They swept Bakersfield. They swept San Diego. I think they sweep Lake Tahoe coming up this weekend on the road. I think they sweep Ontario, Lucas. I think they sweep Long Beach, Lucas. Okay. I think they sweep Bakersfield again. They get the brooms back out and they do it again. Then they're going to Vegas for a showcase that we will be at. I think they beat Rogue Valley. I think they play the Metro Jets on Tuesday, December 29th. And at this point, let me do the math real quick. They're 13-0. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 and 0. I think a 25 and 0 Fresno Monsters team finally gets beat by the Metro Jets on Tuesday, December 19th, and then I don't think they lose again, Lucas. I think they're going 43 1 and 0 on the season. That's my pick for Fresno.
Interesting. I like the respect that you're giving this Fresno team because they deserve it. They've been winning and they've been dominant. But Dan, I look at Fresno and I don't think they lose in November. I don't think they lose in December. I don't think they lose in January.
Oh no.
I think they lose Thursday, February 1st when the Ontario Junior Reign come to the Gateway Ice Center. I think that is the first time that this team fails to secure a point. I think it is the first time they potentially lose at all. Is going to be Thursday, February 1st against the Ontario Junior Reign. That's how good I think this Fresno side is.
So you're telling the folks at home that you think Fresno will be 33 and 0 this season, which would be a record. That would be the most consecutive wins ever. I believe the most consecutive wins in USPHL history was 23 in a row. We will have to check that with George Kelly, the master of statisticians here in the USPHL, but I believe it is 23 in a row by the Florida Junior Blades back when they won a national championship. That would be incredible, record-breaking, and wonderful to watch. Lucas, let's go to Ontario. They play Bakersfield and Long Beach coming up. I think they get wins in both of those matchups. I think their next loss, I just said it, I think it's 3 games away. I think it's the Fresno Monsters coming to Ontario and get a win against them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with you, right? I'm not gonna hedge myself here. I'm doubling down, if nothing else. I just think this Fresno team is just too good, and it's nothing bad against the Ontario Junior Reign. I think this year they've built on what we saw last year, which was a capable team, a team that could pass the puck very well, and a team that wasn't afraid to get physical. I love the Ontario Junior Reign. I love the brand of hockey they play. I love the intensity they play it with. I just think Fresno is that good this year.
Let me put it out there, though. I don't think Ontario loses to anybody but Fresno.
Yes.
until the end of the year. I think
100%.
that's how good Ontario is. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat all season long. I think this Ontario team and Fresno, here's my prediction. Ready? Fresno goes 43-1-0-0, record-breaking campaign in the history of the USPHL, loses in the Pacific Championship Series to this Ontario Reign team that is just an absolute juggernaut. They play like their coach, right? Like coaches. He looks to me like a Paul Bunyan type. He's like 7'5",
Yep.
225 of muscle. This is a big dude behind the bench. I think Ontario Junior Reign play big. They're a playoff built team. They're a team built to win a championship. I think we might see Ontario at Nationals. We'll see. We'll see. Let's go, Lucas. Two more in the Premier before we get to the elite. The Carolina Junior Canes. 10 straight wins. 16-4-0-0 in the season. Ranked number 3 in our last power rankings, the highest they've been in the Premier in the last 2 seasons. Then they beat Charlotte, who we had at number 1. Then Charlotte loses 2 in a row. So you got to think right now, if you were to make the power rankings today, Potomac 1, Carolina 2, Charlotte 3. They play the Rush on Saturday night with Dan Kay and Lucas Jones in the building. And by in the building, we mean at the building because it's an outdoor building. And much like the community center, event center, community furniture and things and stuff and gizmos and gadgets out there in Minnesota that the Squatch play in, we're going to be at the Truist Field Stadium. Park, ballpark, baseball field, auditorium for outdoor sports and now hockey rinks in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It flows. It's a
What
name
a
that
good name
flows
they've
right,
got there.
right off the
If
tongue
it's
there.
Truist Field, you don't need stadium. If it's Truist Stadium, you don't need ballpark. When will people naming facilities learn the need for naming? You don't need to name it multiple things. Once you've said field, we're at your field. I don't care if it's also a stadium. Figure it out.
I will say there's an exception. The exception that I could see is if you had a ballpark. Let's say you named it. Let's say you named it Dan K Field, right? A couple of bleachers, not a ton of space. But then all of a sudden Lucas comes in and he's like, I love this field. I want to build a stadium. Wouldn't it be Dan K Field at Lucas Jones Stadium?
That's 2 different names. I will take that. But Truist Field Stadium is not okay.
Maybe they
It's
haven't
not
sold the
acceptable.
naming rights yet. They're ready. They're
Truist
forward thinking.
Truist Field Stadium ballpark hosts the scene. I think because of how mad I am, I think the Rush went on Saturday night. But then I think this. I think the Rush went on Saturday night. But I think Columbia gets swept by Carolina. I think Richmond gets swept by Carolina. I think Carolina goes to the Florida Showcase and gives a bunch of people trouble. I think they sweep the Showcase down in Florida. I think Carolina comes back from the break. They go to Tampa. They play a tough schedule. They sweep that one too. I don't know if Carolina's losing much the rest of the way until they get to Potomac in January 13th. But I think here's the question. Can they keep the points per game streak going by at least getting to OT against Charlotte in the outdoor rink?
Yeah, that'll be the question, and I think they do. I think that's going to be an extremely close game, and we knew it was going to be, right? We knew it was going to be a really good game between these two. I think they keep the point streak going. I think they actually do win that game at Truist Field. I think that'll be a fun one for us to call.
Truist Field Stadium.
Truist Field Stadium Arena Ballpark. I look ahead to Friday, December 15th, first game, the Florida Showcase, Hertz Arena Green Rink against the Bold City Battalion. I think it's the Battalion that take them down.
Guys rocking a battalion shirt, calling out the beautiful, wonderful folks in Carolina. And we know, Lucas, I get an angry text every time I don't automatically put them number 1 at every level of every sport ever and say that they're the best team ever. They get fired up in Carolina. And I just never want to tell the folks in Carolina, what you say about them off the air. It's
Well,
just
you
Lucas,
certainly couldn't.
real anti-Carolina guy. It's just I'm always like, Lucas, just stop it, man. They're a great team. What else do they need to do to appease you? And you say they'll never will. They never.
They never will.
No. Let's keep moving. Potomac Patriots, Lucas. Here's an interesting one. I don't think Potomac loses a game in regulation this year. I don't think they do. And you might be saying they play Charlotte 2 more times, Dan. Well, they're playing them at home. They're playing them on December 9th and December 10th. And I think that they survive that thing at the worst with 2 OTLs. At the best, I think they win 2 there. I think Potomac is running away with this division towards the end of the year. I think the next time Potomac loses, on the road, Wake Competition Center against Carolina. Here's what I think happens. I think they go into the break without a loss. I think they come out of the break and we start hitting the bells and the alarms as media people. We go, oh no, is Potomac in trouble? Because they play Carolina and Charlotte. And I think that they lose 2 of 4 there.
That's interesting take. I think it's too bold of me at this point to say that they won't lose in regulation this season. As much as I have a feeling like that could happen, truly something historic in the USPHL, I just think that's too many games in a row. I think they drop the January series against the Rush. I think they end up dropping that points wise, but I think they also end up losing in regulation on Sunday, January 21st. I think that January 20th game gonna be really physical. Yes, am I calling a physical game 2 months in advance? That's my job, right? But that's what I think is going to happen. So I think that second game, that January 21st, that's the game they drop.
Let's go to the Elite. There's 2 more teams to talk about. We start first with the Metro Jets Elite, who just swept a showcase out there in Fort Wayne. Congrats to them, beating the Chicago Cougars, the Chicago Crush, the Fort Wayne Spacemen, the Motor City Gamblers. They've beaten Decatur twice. This is a team on a roll right now. 6 straight victories for them, Lucas. They've got a showcase coming up here. They'll see a lot of those same teams from the Midwest East again. I think they beat them yet again. I think the next time Metro is losing, Thursday, January 4th. I think they win, not the forces with you, not January 4th. January 4th, the date. I think against the Wilkes-Barre Wagon. I think in Tampa is the next time Metro loses. I think they're going on a hot streak here.
Love that Metro's going to be in Tampa. That makes that event a lot of fun, especially for two guys that are going to be spending a lot of time at that event. But I think their loss happens earlier than that.
Okay.
You got to look, I think, at the fact that they will not be on the road again until December 9th against the Fort Wayne Spacemen. They will be spending essentially the next 3 weeks at home between the showcase and a couple of home hosts against the Motor City Gamblers, 2 against the Chicago Cougars, 1 against Fort Wayne. I think those are all wins for them. I think the Fort Wayne Spacemen on the road is going to be a huge test, but I think their first regulation loss comes against the Motor City Gamblers at the Big Boy Arena on Tuesday, December 12th. I think they'll be at home a little too much. A 10 a.m. game on a Tuesday, gonna be a little tough for them to get ready for. So I think Motor City takes that one.
I like it against Motor City. Let's mark it down. Our final one, Lucas, the Tampa Bay Juniors, 4-0-0-1 in their last 5. The last one that we talk about before we hit the road to Charlotte for some outdoor hockey.
Man, the Tampa Bay Juniors, I mean, what a season they're having at both levels right now. They're really battling. I think the Florida division as a whole and the Premier and Elite has been very consistent, very fun to watch. Say the same for the Southeast as well. We've talked about them a bunch today and last week as well. I think the Juniors go into Atlanta and they drop one. I think for them, this winning streak is a little more short-lived. They've got a Friday game. They've got a Saturday game. They just came off 2 wins at the elite level against the Bold City Battalion. Dan, I think they dropped the Friday game. I think this streak is kind of over before it really gets going here. I think that Friday game, 8 p.m. at the Atlanta Ice House is where they lose.
Interesting pick right there. I've got to go with you on this one. I think I got to say the same thing. I think this Atlanta team's just, you want to talk about a team that's been hot of late, this Atlanta team is that. I don't think it's Friday, though. I think Tampa gets game 1. It's a late start. They've got some time to work the bus legs out. I think that their loss comes the next day, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that's a regulation loss for them. I think the early start, the 9 a.m. on Sunday, OT loss. I think they get 3 out of 6 from Atlanta, which is what you want. You go on the road in this tough Florida division. You want 3 to 4 points out of 3 games you play on the road. You want 2 to 3 points out of 2 games you play. That's how you win a championship in the Florida division, the Southeast, some of these tougher divisions around the country. That's always the goal. Lucas, a red eye is on the line. We will see what we get out of that one. But next up, folks, if you're looking for us, where in the world will the Dan K Show be? Dan K going to be making the trek up to Charlotte via vehicle, okay? So we're going to go with Dan K driving. Lucas is going to get on what we call a plane, okay? And he's going to go out of Newark. He's going to land in Charlotte. So Charlotte's right here on my ear. Okay, so we're both in Charlotte. We land. Okay, Saturday night, Truist Field Stadium ballpark at the stadium at the field. We call Carolina Junior Canes Charlotte Rush. Okay, a little outdoor game. Then we both. I'm gonna leave my car here, so I'm gonna leave the car.
Leave
He's
it.
gonna leave that plane behind. He's not taking it with him. Let's get another implement here. Let's get. Okay, let's go to key to the city. So this is the key to the city. We're in Charlotte. We're gonna take off, and the K is gonna be Detroit, Michigan. We're going to land at the Detroit airport, okay? I'm going to rent a car. So now we got to get a new car. Let's get a new car here. It's a Nerf gun, okay? That's a new car. Let's go, instead of that, let's go Gritty. Gritty's the new car, okay? We're going to get in a car. We're going to go to Mount Clemens Ice Arena. Matt Prier has changed our schedule 75 million times leading up to this event, so we cannot promote to you in any way what we're calling, what we're doing, or who we're calling it with. I have no clue what's going on, but we're happy to help out despite the chaos going on. We will call a bunch of hockey games in Detroit, and then we'll both hop on separate planes again. Separate planes, like go post-it notes, and I'll fly back to Charlotte on my ear. Lucas back to Newark at the top of the T, and then I will get my car back, drive to Florida.
Easy. Efficient. Best way to travel. By a variety of means and airline providers and rental cars and two different sets of equipment split up and being mailed across the country. This is how it's done, folks. John Madden had a bus. Guy was a little soft. He only had to go to one place at a time. He knew his whole schedule ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
These professionals, what do they know about traveling, life on the road? The Dan K Show is on the road for you, wherever we got to go, however we got to get there, however many weird days off we have nothing to do in between. We do it for you.
Please reach out to league pages with hashtag DanKMobile at Commissioner Bob Turo and ask him to buy us an RV. We want a bus, we want an RV, but we certainly can't afford it. So ask the league, ask Commissioner Bob Turo, buy Dan his magical RV. Let's wrap it with my face all over it. We can even put his face on it too.
Are you like a Miss Frizzle in this situation? Is this like the Magic Dan K Show bus?
Yes, it is. 100% it is. Remember when she like would shrink kids down and go inside of like human bodies and stuff?
Yeah,
It's crazy.
that's crazy. But you know what? Paid attention to it. It was interesting.
Yeah, but those kids didn't react the way real kids would have reacted. Like in real life, I'd be like, "Oh my, we're going where? I'm the size of a pea, Miss Frizzle. This doesn't seem safe."
It's magic. It's all safe. It's all been tested. It's all proved.
I don't know. I've watched too much David Blaine to trust it. When Dan K's on the mic, it's always hockey night. Lucas, your parting words. Let us know where you think the next hot streak is coming from in the USPHL Premier Elite at the _NK Show. And be sure to be a part of the show. So much more hockey to come. The Carolina Cup this weekend, Saturday night, 5:30 and 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you can't make it out to the Truist Field Stadium ballpark place, then go on Flow Hockey. Tune in. We'll have the broadcast for you there. Dan K and Lucas Jones, along with a special guest, Mr. Dan Bradley, on the call. We love Danny B's, baby. That's it. That's all we got. Then we go up to Mount Clemens Ice Arena. We call a accoutrement of games. If you want to know what we're calling, so do we. We'll see you there, folks.